They used to call him Sergeant Martinez. Michael Martinez had served 20 years in Special Forces, putting his life on the line to protect American soil and interests abroad. But the scars that war had left behind had condemned him to silence. Now he didn't talk to anyone, working alone on night shifts guarding a factory, trying to get by on minimum wage. The workers called him Silent Mike. But that night when an armed gang broke into the factory, they learned why this quiet man didn't talk, and just how deadly 20 years of military training could be. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we continue this powerful story of honor, sacrifice, and the protective instinct that never dies, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who serve their country but have been forgotten by society. In the industrial district outside of Detroit, the massive building of Great Lakes Manufacturing stood alone in the darkness of night. It was 10:30 p.m. The last worker had left the factory, the doors were locked. Now there was only one person inside, Michael Martinez, 48 years old, night shift security guard. Michael, as always, took his flashlight and began his rounds. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridors. Same route, same checkpoints, same silence. The same routine for 5 years. Every hour he went up to each floor, checked the machines, inspected the doors, then returned to the security office. The workers called him Silent Mike because no one could have a conversation with him. If you said hello, he'd say hello. If you asked how are you, he'd say fine, and that was it. If anyone tried to talk more, he'd walk away. He sat alone during lunch breaks. He never attended anyone's birthday parties, never came to company picnics. But no one knew his real story. Michael Martinez was 18 years old when he enlisted in 9th. He was intelligent, disciplined, and physically strong young man. After completing basic training, he applied for Special Forces and was accepted. This wasn't easy. Only 5% of thousands of candidates succeeded. Special Forces training had changed him, not just physically but mentally. He learned to think strategically, to sense danger beforehand, how to create maximum effect with minimum loss. Most importantly, he understood what love of country really meant. From 1998 onwards, he began serving in Afghanistan and Iraq, operations against terrorist organizations, border security counterinsurgency missions. For 20 years, he participated in countless operations, lost comrades, and was wounded several times himself. His hardest moment came in 2015. During an operation in Afghanistan, he was commanding a 12-man team. According to intelligence, terrorists had taken civilians hostage in a remote village. During the night operation, they had fallen into an ambush. In a 6-hour firefight, he had lost 3 of his brothers. Michael himself was wounded in the shoulder but completed the mission and saved the civilians. He was never the same after that night. At night, he heard his comrades' voices in his sleep. During the day, he would suddenly break into sweats, feeling his heart racing. Doctors called it post-traumatic stress disorder. In 2018, he had used his early retirement option. No house, no wife, no kids. He had distanced himself from his family, and his friends were gone too. Military pension was $2,100 a month, rent was $1,200. He needed to work to live. That's when he found this security job. Night shift alone, didn't have to talk to anyone, $3,200 a month, not enough, but he managed. This night had started like every other night. He came to work at 10 p.m. Nessio from the day shift had said, "Take it easy," and he had replied, "Thanks." Then he was left alone. At 2:30 a.m., he was making his third round. First floor, second floor, third floor. Everything normal. As he was going up to the 4th floor, he heard it. Metal sound. The sound of cut chain-link fence. Michael stopped immediately. He listened carefully. 20 years of military experience kicked in. This sound meant the fence was being cut, and at 2:30 a.m. at this hour, no one should be around the factory perimeter. Quietly, he returned to the security office. He checked the security cameras. There were 4 people in the backyard. They were dressed in all black, faces covered. In their hands were cutting tools and guns. Michael's heart rate increased. But this wasn't fear, it was adrenaline. After 20 years, it was action time again. His first option was to call the police. But what would these men have done by the time police arrived? The factory had $30 million worth of machinery. Also, families were sleeping in the neighboring apartment complex. These men could harm them while escaping. His second option was to run. He could exit through the back door and get away, but then he would be branded as someone who abandoned his post, and Michael Martinez had never abandoned a post in 20 years. The third option was to intervene. 4-1. Normally impossible, but Michael wasn't a normal man. First, he called the police. Armed robbery attempt in progress at Industrial District, he said. Address, Great Lakes Manufacturing. 4 individuals armed. Then he hung up. Now he needed to plan his tactics. 4 people probably in scattered positions. He was alone but had advantages. He knew the building very well, could move in the dark, had military training. He took out from his locker the combat knife he had kept for 20 years. Sharp, silent, deadly. He also took his flashlight. This would be his weapon. First target was the man trying to enter the lobby. Michael approached silently. While the man was forcing the door, he approached from behind and put the knife to his neck. "Make one sound and I'll kill you," he whispered. The man froze. "Drop your weapon." The man dropped his gun. Michael bound him with zip ties. First one down. The second man was in the warehouse. Michael silently neutralized him too. Second floor, third floor. Using military tactics, he caught 2 more without making any noise. The last man was in the main production hall, examining expensive machinery. This man seemed more alert. Michael tried a different method. "Freeze," he shouted and shone his flashlight in the man's face. The man was startled, raised his gun, but Michael had already jumped on him. 20 years of combat training did its job in a few seconds. At 3:15 a.m., everything was over. 4 men were lying on the ground, bound with zip ties. Michael hadn't been injured at all. Police arrived at 3:20 a.m. Michael met them, explained the situation. The police officers were astonished. "How did you do this?" asked the sergeant. "I was a soldier," Michael said simply. By morning, word had spread. The factory manager came. Workers gathered. Everyone was looking at Michael with different eyes. "Mr. Martinez," said the manager, "we didn't know who you really were." "Who am I?" said Michael. "A hero." That day, for the first time in 5 years, Michael ate lunch with the workers. They talked. Michael told them 20 years of military service, special forces, Afghanistan and Iraq operations. "Why didn't you tell us?" someone asked. "It wasn't necessary," Michael said. "If a soldier is always a soldier, there's no need to tell." A week later, the factory manager called Michael to his office. "Mr. Martinez, I want to offer you the position of security chief with a salary increase. Someone with your experience could run this factory's security department." Michael thought about it. "I accept, but I have one condition." "What's that?" "I want to continue the night shift too. I want to guard this place at night." 3 months later, Michael was now security chief. He worked in his office during the day, in the field at night. But more importantly, he was talking now. He had become friends with the workers. Some even called him Sarge. One day, a young worker came to him. "Mike," he said, "I want to enlist in the military. I'm going to apply for special forces. Any advice?" Michael smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in a long time. "Go for your country," he said. "Not for money, not for rank. For your country. Because once you're a soldier, you remain a soldier for life." That evening at home, he took out his old uniform from the closet. He cleaned it, ironed it, hung it back in place. He had nothing left to hide. He looked in the mirror. "Sergeant Martinez," he said to himself, "welcome back." The next night, while walking around guarding the factory, he was thinking. Maybe he had never really left. Maybe a soldier just changes uniforms. If there's a country to protect, people to protect, he's a soldier everywhere. His phone in his pocket rang. Ahmed from the night shift was calling. "Sarge, there's a suspicious vehicle at Gate B. Can you check it out?" "On my way," Michael said. And he ran there, because a soldier never abandons his post, even if the uniform changes. 6 months later, a story appeared in the local newspaper. Hero security guard saves factory from armed robbery. The story featured Michael's photo. The caption read, "Former Special Forces Sergeant Michael Martinez used his military experience to protect the factory." Michael read the newspaper, smiled. Then he hung the newspaper on the wall. For the first time, he was proud of who he was. That night, while walking around guarding the factory, he remembered that young soldier from 20 years ago, the young man who took an oath for his country, fought for his comrades, never abandoned any post, was still there, only his hair had grayed, his experience had increased. "The watch continues," he murmured to himself, and smiling, he continued his rounds. During his rounds that night, he thought about all the veterans like him, men and women who had served their country with honor, then returned home to find a society that had moved on without them. Some struggled with PTSD, some with unemployment, some with the feeling that their service didn't matter anymore. But Michael had learned something important that night when he faced those four armed men. His service did matter. The training, the discipline, the protective instinct, none of it was wasted. It just needed the right moment to resurface. A month later, Michael started something new. Every Saturday morning, he began visiting the local VA center, talking to younger veterans who were struggling with the transition to civilian life. He shared his story, listened to theirs, and helped them understand that being a soldier wasn't just a job, it was identity that could serve them in any situation. "Your service doesn't end when you take off the uniform," he would tell them. "It just changes form. You're still protecting people, still serving your country. You just have to find the right way to do it." One young Marine, recently returned from overseas, asked him, "How do you deal with the nightmares, Sarge?" Michael looked at him with understanding eyes. "You don't fight them," he said. "You honor them. Those dreams, those memories, they're your brothers calling to you, reminding you that you survived for a reason. Find that reason. Make their sacrifice count." The factory became more than just Michael's workplace. It became a symbol of his transformation. The same building where he had once walked in silence now echoed with his voice as he trained new security personnel, shared his knowledge, and built relationships with people who had once seen him as just another face in the crowd. The workers no longer called him Silent Mike. Now they called him Sarge, and they said it with respect, with affection, with the understanding that some titles are earned through sacrifice and can never be taken away. On the anniversary of that night when he faced the armed gang, the factory held a small ceremony. Nothing elaborate, just the workers gathering to acknowledge what Michael had done. But as he looked around at the faces of people who had become his second family, Michael realized that the real victory wasn't stopping four criminals. The real victory was coming back to life. So now I ask you, have you ever met someone who had to hide their true identity? Someone who served their country but was forgotten by society, yet emerged again in times of crisis? Share their story in the comments, because here at The Human Stories, we believe that real soldiers never truly retire, they just change their posts. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, subscribe and share it with someone who respects those who serve their country but have been forgotten. We'll see you in the next story, and until then, remember, true protectors never abandon their post, they just change their uniforms.